Doheny State Beach's White Wagtail 1996 visits. Joel Weintraub and Tim Ryan. Hi, thanks for joining me on a throwback talk. Now, I have a cough today, so I might be able to, delete it from the audio track. So let's see how this goes. Here is a view of Doheny State Beach, the entrance. This was taken last month, January of 2024. Doheny State Beach is located in Dana Point, South Orange County, California. During the winter of 95-96, it provided a number of spectacular bird species: an adult lesser black gull, we came back for a number of winters, Ivory Gull, one-day wonder, including our subject, a white wagtail, that drew over an estimated 500 birders from throughout the United States. This throwback video hopes to capture the excitement of that time. Well, let's see what the visitor center has in mind for us. Oh, look, white wagtails are here. The white wagtail one was there starting, at least identified, on January 25th, all the way to April 12th of 1996. About a month into its presence, Tim Ryan and I'm Joel Weintraub, decided to systematically record the behavior of this vagrant and keep track of the birders coming to see it. And what we're going to show you are a series of pictures, stories. Well, you'll see, to get an overview of the species' residence here. Over the 76 days the wagtail was observed in Orange County, Tim spent an estimated 100 hours, and I at least 110 hours viewing the bird. Together we probably saw the wagtail in excess of 140 hours, or a calculated 15% of the bird's daylight hours. Additional uncounted hours were spent trying to track down the wagtail's foraging areas and waiting for the bird to arrive in early afternoon at Doheny State Beach. The wagtail's presence was noted in a couple of publications. The Wandering Tattler is Sea and Stage Audubon of Orange County's California newsletter, and Doug Willick's column on March of 1996 indicated, start there, the most exciting of these rarities was a white/black-backed wagtail at Doheny State Beach, first discovered on January 25th by Tim Ryan. Although viewed by many birders over the next several days, as of this writing, the bird's identity remains unresolved. And the problem was that they couldn't figure out whether it was, quote, a white wagtail or a black-backed wagtail. Or they couldn't even figure out the sex of the bird, the age of the bird. Everybody was arguing. And today, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. But this was probably an immature male. That was the final decision on it. And you will be able to see as the bird molted, as it went through its stay here, it went from a gray back to a black back. In addition to that, the California Bird Records Committee, in their 1996 report, you can see this online, indicated that there were two individuals, black-backed wagtails, actually black-backed/white wagtails, in the state of California. One was up in Mendocino County, as you can see here, and then a remarkably well-documented, well, guess who did the documentation there, was an immature male along San Juan Creek, Dana Point, San Juan Capistrano, Orange County. And then there's a list of people who submitted documentation. Could have been notes, it could have been sketches, it could have been slides, videotape. MD is Maya Decker, TR is Tim, and I'm at the end, JDW. The danger there indicates that I supplied them with lots of video, slides, etc. material. But note, and this is important for this talk, that now black-backed wagtails are now considered a subspecies of white wagtail. So there's no discussion anymore. It's a subspecies of white wagtails. And we'll call the bird at Doheny a white wagtail in this talk, even though you'll see black-backed, on occasion when I repeat people's observations. So I went through the list of people who actually contributed to that particular record, and there's quite a number of them, and some of them you may recognize birders in California. This is in 1996. In addition to that, the California Bird Records Committee, on their website, you have the ability to enter a bird's name and find out its status in California, especially rare birds. Because common birds, really, not sure they're going to even be on this page. So I went in there and I asked how many white wagtails were seen in Orange County in California in their records, and there are only 4 records. Actually, 3 individuals, because if you look closely, you'll see that the Doheny bird that was first identified on January 25th, 1996, left on April 12th, came back the following fall. And I'm going to talk more about that later. In fact, now there are 5 records, and not official yet because the documentation has not been submitted to the Bird Records Committee. But the birding gods have a sense of humor. And while I was compiling this video, another Orange County white wagtail appeared, and I went out to look at it, and there's my photo below. This was found by Giselle Schoen on January 28, 2024 in the lower Santa Ana River. And I'm going to show you more pictures and video of this bird later. Additional stuff, because I have put out a YouTube video on this 2024 white wagtail. Talk about that later. Well, in 1996, my optical equipment wasn't that great, but, and I'll show you a little bit about that. It wasn't up to the task, really. And the wagtail proved a difficult photographic subject. Small, wary, usually moving, and often seen in poor light conditions. Usually only seen in around sunset or sunrise. I took mostly slides of the wagtail with a Pentax camera and a variety of lenses, mostly an 800mm f8 old Vivitar lens, or a Novaflex 400mm lens with a 2x heliconverter. Took about 400 slides. Most of them were unusable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a timeline of the bird. We're going to look at people who came. We're going to look at stories. We're going to look at photographs. So it will be interesting to go through this. So there's the 25th, and Tim Ryan finds the wagtail, and very importantly, he saw it go into its roost tree. And then people figured out how the bird foraged around the lower San Juan Creek. I'll show you aerial photos of that. And then there is the discussion about what it is. What is it, a white wagtail or a black-backed wagtail? And this was on cowbird, which is the predecessor of cowbirds now. That all California listserv has moved around a little bit and changed its name. Tim was the first birder who identified the wagtail on 25th of January, 1996. Late in the afternoon, he was walking over the lower bridge at Doheny State Beach. He even saw it go into its roost tree. Tim made about 30 phone calls that night, and a number of birders went out on Friday, the 26th of January, to search for the bird. Starting January 26th, the vagrant was seen to forage in the lagoon below the lower bridge and in the channel above the upper bridge. It's a double bridge situation here, in early morning and late afternoon. Where it went upstream between those times was unknown. So we look at the roost tree, And here is an aerial photograph that I found on some historical imagery on an Orange County site. It could actually be from taken 1996. So you can see the double bridge here. A is the lower bridge. It's actually a double bridge because part of it is PCH and part of it is within the state park. The campground is in the lower right. The day use area with large parking of Doheny State Beach is on the lower left. B, above that letter B, is the Hilton Inn, brightly lit at night, and just right below B is the roost tree within the campground. Now I'm blowing up this picture because it seems to me that there are two islands there below the bridge with dark in the center. And I think this is going to probably date this photo, because if I actually take a look at a slide that I don't have many slides. I have about a half a carousel of slides from this time. Moved a lot and we downsized, and you know how that goes. But this this slide, was taken on February 24th of 1996, and it shows you, let me emphasize that, it shows you those two islands of the reeds. Those aren't here today. And then looking down, you'll see the Hilton Inn on the left. You'll see a bunch of trees on the right. The first one right off of this bridge is a sycamore, and then there are actually two eucalyptus. Here is a view looking up at the bridge on January of 2024. You can see that those vegetated islands, little islands, aren't there at all, looking at the Hilton Inn. So here is a view of the eucalyptus trees taken last month, January 11th, 2024. The first one, it seemed to me, my memory was that it had a lot denser foliage, because once the wagtail went into the tree, no one could find it. And I'll show you another view of it, again from last month. The first tree, it was about 40 to 45 feet tall in 1996. The wagtail entered about 35 to 38 feet high and entered into it. So people would wait at around sunset right in front of the tree, and it was a big event. The wagtail was never observed leaving the tree in the morning, but call notes from the bird as it alighted or preened in the lagoon, or as it flew over the bridges, usually gave us our starting times. The height of the roosting area was measured by an optical tape measure, if you're curious, and the tree's height by triangulation using an inclinometer. I first saw the bird on the 28th of January. I missed it that morning. It had already left the roost area and flew to parts unknown up San Juan Creek. Had to get there pretty early. I went back in the afternoon, and about 40 birders were there. The bird came in late to the bridge area of the creek, and I did get distant views of the bird and some crowd pictures. I don't have many pictures of birders. I only have 4. I have a lot of pictures, a lot of stories about the birders that I'm going to share. So again, the lower bridge is an A. I'm going to show you pictures of birders waiting on that bridge for the wagtail to come back at sunset. And B is a bike path that goes along the west side of San Juan Creek. And I'm going to show you pictures of birders there. Okay, so take a look at this. Maybe you can identify some people. Let me take a drink of water while you're doing that. So obviously the wagtail is not there yet. It's late afternoon. You can see the long shadows. Take a look at the palm trees, because I'm going to show you what this looks like last month. If a wagtail would show up in this area of the lagoon, could we have a similar scene? And the answer is no. Look what they did to it. Maybe they did this to stop people from throwing trash into the lagoon. Maybe it's a safety feature. Look at the palm trees. Somebody's idea of what a palm tree should look like. You know, it reminds me of a Conrad cartoon. Conrad was a political cartoonist for the LA Times, and he once had a picture of an artist drawing the California beach, pretty beach scene, sunset, through a fence. And the fence is also drawn in as part of the artist's picture. This also reminds me of the situation when I looked for the 2024 wagtail. I was taking pictures through a fence. Well, it looks like here, this is the bike path on January 28, 1996, that everybody's looking at the wagtail. I'm looking at the birders. And the wagtail had this interesting behavior that where you were, it wasn't. So the wagtail was on the opposite side of the creek. Lots of excitement. Here's my first picture of the wagtail. Isn't that neat? That's a real trophy picture, taken January 31st, 1996. I got better with time. So we continue our timeline here. I started to post on Cowbird information about the wagtail. Unfortunately, I don't have saved on my computer those posts, and I can't figure out where the archive, the old archive is for the messages on Cowbird. And in addition to that, I started to post on something called Bird Chat, which was a nationwide birding listserv, very active, lots of people. You don't hear too much about that today. On the 10th, the foraging area upstream was found, and then on the 23rd, Tim and I started detailed notes and observations on the wagtail and the birders who were coming to see it. So here is my first post to Bird Chat on the 14th, 1996. And instead of showing you that heading, I'm just going to do it this way. I still have those on my computer. I was very happy to see that. And that's where I also talked about stories of the birders who came. So I said then that this reply to Ian Tisda's request for information, people were asking, we want more information, deserves a general posting. Tim Ryan and I have been babysitting the wagtail in Dana Point, California. We have a good idea of the movement patterns and activity of the bird. We got better and better with more and more data. Tim or I have been at Doheny in the late afternoons the last 2 weeks, and most mornings we are residents of Dana Point. And the bird, if you follow these instructions, is very accommodating and seeable. I also started to get a little bit better at taking pictures of this bird. So here is February 4th at sunset. Another view looking at the gray back of the bird. Another view showing the bib, which actually got to be larger over time. Besides the continuing discussion on what was its species, and that was an active topic, the question of where the wagtail spent its midday was on people's minds, especially those who came late, couldn't find the bird. What are you going to do for a couple of hours waiting for it to come back? You're going to try and find it. Birders searched all the green areas along San Juan Creek, at least around the flood control channel, extending up to San Juan Capistrano. Continuing Bird Chat 14th February. We now know where it flies during the day. It took me some time to track down this location. The wagtail flies 2.5 miles up the creek and forages in a 1-mile stretch of streambed. It spends much time in the 1-block area below where Lenovia Avenue in San Juan Capistrano crosses the creek. In this area, the creek is not concreted. It is severely degraded. Don't let that stop you. Watch out for horseback riders, dogs being walked, children playing, etc. The creek can get muddy towards the freeway bridge, so wear appropriate shoe wear. The bird spends most of its day along this 1-mile stretch, chasing black phoebes, confusing mockingbirds, spending most of its time near the water but sometimes perching on the edge of the streamside ridges or even on tree branches. So we gave pretty detailed information. That's what I did on BirdChat. So here is a satellite view of the area, a recent one. There's Doheny State Beach on the lower left, and the area that the wagtail was foraging during the day. The road that crosses that red area on the upper one is the La Novia Bridge. And I took pictures the day after, on February 11th, of the area. You can see it's pretty degraded. It looks like they did some flood control and just removed all the vegetation. What does the area look like today? If a wagtail was here, would it be foraging in this area? And the answer is no. So here's a picture of the same area. This is the La Novia Bridge on January of 2024. You can see it's all grown in with water-loving trees. And wagtails, according to the literature, are not found where there is high vegetation. But while the wagtail was foraging in this area, people could get pretty good pictures of it. And you can see it's starting to get a little bit black on the back. And then it would go back to the roosting area. And on some days, this is from the post of February 14th in BirdChat, on some days it puts on such a roosting display that the crowd of birders has been known to applaud the bird as it went as the tree. It was a cultural event. BirdChat, 22 February. People were asking, is it still there? Yes, it's a good thing, too. Jim Hulley last month drove all night. Last month, that's in January. Drove all night, 1,000-mile round trip, and arrived on January 6th at this beach to view our January 5th Ivory Gull sighting. He was 5 hours too late. Now, let me give you some background there. I was the one that found the Ivory Gull, and I, Carolyn Rainsford, Lucy Lee, and Irene Horiuchi helped identify it. It was a one-day wonder, with only about 24 birders getting to see it. And then I faced hundreds of disappointed birders the following day at the beach. Well, that's an interesting experience. Thus, when Jim decided to come down last weekend to see the wagtail based on my cowbird postings and email messages, I, 1, left town, 2, prepared to change my email address, and 3, gave him Tim Ryan's phone number. Jim did see the bird after again driving all night with the help of Tim Ryan. Tim didn't help him drive all night. He did help him find the wagtail. Continuing the 22nd BirdChat. I know people from Texas and Maryland who saw my listing on BirdChat and were in this area saw the bird. We just got an influx of rough-winged swallows, and the wagtail is aggressively chasing them, as well as killdeer, black phoebes, American pipit, etc. It is amazing it can turn with the best turns of these birds. I'm going to talk about interaction of the 2024 wagtail with American pipit later and show you some video of that. Now, I'm going to show you some more birders pictures. And we're on the east side of the San Juan Creek. And look at that. Here we are, Saturday, February 24th, a month into the residence of the wagtail, and people are lining up. They're lining up to see the bird coming back from its foraging area. In fact, if you look farther, you'll see a group of people on the lower bridge. They're probably birders too. And if I turn around, and maybe you're one of the people sitting there, I see even more birders waiting for the wagtail to come and do its little performance. And Tim has the red cap on, showing people the sights. Can we repeat that if a wagtail came today? Well, let's see. First of all, here we are at the end of the lower bridge. The Hilton Inn is on the left. This is taken last month in January. The roost tree is right around the corner here, and people would be able to go through the fence. People go through the fence to go on the east side of San Juan Creek. There's an alley to the left of the Hilton Inn. Well, you can't do that anymore. They got that barricaded. They did put in a traffic light so you could cross over that way. That's pretty neat. And then here we're looking towards the roost tree, and we're also seeing the pathway going up to this waiting area. What does that look like today? Well, it doesn't look like it's that encouraging. In fact, if we read the sign, public recreation hours, no public access outside posted hours, that's not welcoming, and it's not welcoming given the behavior patterns of the wagtail in terms of being there at sunrise and sunset. What about this area? Could we sit there? No. What about this area? Could we set up our scopes there and our cameras and stuff? And there's my C90 scope in the front. Could we do that? No. And as to the right, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the area north of the Hilton Inn. So here we are in March. Now, I have some things to tell you that aren't necessarily March related. And let's start with an undated video, probably in February or early March, because the wagtail is still gray-backed, by Maya Decker. Maya taped the vagrant on a number of occasions during his visit, where she handheld her high-8 video camera to a cower spotting scope ocular. That's some feat, because knowing that this wagtail moves a lot, she had to move the scope, keep the camera on it, etc. With her permission and my thanks, here's the wagtail in action from 1996, pecking at food and running, lunging for food, and of course wagging. This was a very active bird. Much more active than my little half an hour view of the 2024 white wagtail in Costa Mesa. What I've done is I've adjusted the brightness and contrast. I think there's about 2 minutes of video here. The bird is feeding on small flies and insect larvae in the water. It will do this lunge sort of foraging. Very rarely will jump in the air to try and snare something. In puddles, it tended to peck a lot and maybe have one peck every 3 seconds. In the stream, it did maybe 1 out of 6 feeding actions. I did a 2-hour taping situation, recording its behavior in terms of feeding. Very active, very healthy individual. Not sure what the sex is of the 2024 bird is, but hopefully people will figure that out. And it could stop on a dime. Okay, hope you enjoyed that little segment. I also wanted to show you that we kept information about when the wagtail was actually seen, when it left the the lower San Juan Creek, etc. So, and sunrise, how did we figure out sunrise, sunset? We did the information in the Los Angeles Times. So the average time that the wagtail was seen in the lagoon after in sunrise was about 5 minutes before sunrise, and it varied from 17 minutes to maybe 13 after. We had 49 observations. The average time it stayed in the area after it left the roost before flying upstream during that part of February, March, and early April was 47 minutes. So you had to be there early to see this bird. And then at sunset, the bird arrived back before sunset from upstream when it was foraging upstream, about 76 minutes before sunset, and it roosted just before sunset at about 7 minutes before sunset. And we had a good sample size, 47 times that we recorded that information. So here we are in March. On March 2nd was the last date at the Lenovia Bridge area, and the birders who went to Lenovia on March 1st were able to see it, and I have a story about that. Then it spent time around puddles north of the Hilton Hotel. The best pictures were probably taken around March 15th. I know that my best pictures were taken then. And then on March 25th, the wagtail resumes upstream foraging to unknown areas. So in early March, there were puddles with lots of food for the wagtail, and then when those dried up, the wagtail again went to foraging areas. Some March comments. March 2nd was the last date that the wagtail was definitely seen at the Lenovia site. Rains the end of February, early March created temporary pools in the field north of the Hilton Inn, and the wagtail switched its behavior to remain around the State Beach area. Bird Chat, 7th of March. People have asked what comparable North American species is the same niche as the wagtail. That's easy. It's a plover. Flycatcher plover hybrid, naturally. This week we had visitors from Florida, Maryland, Oregon, Virginia, Colorado, blah, blah, blah. Look at that. As well as various sites in California, including Tule Lake near the Oregon border. 2 visits stand out. Bill Smith flew in from Florida on non-refundable tickets. It was a gamble. His goal is to see all of North America's breeding bird species. After traveling all day, he drove directly from LAX with his wife to San Juan Capistrano. His hope was to see the wagtail on that Friday so he could visit friends in Northern California. This was March 1st. But he was prepared to stay to find the bird if necessary. I agreed to meet him at the Lenovia Bridge. He arrived at about 1:15 p.m., 1 minute after I had located the wagtail almost directly below the bridge. All I had to do was point straight down to show him the bird. In the meantime, another birder from Oregon came up to us. He had spent 3 to 4 hours on the Lenovia site without seeing the wagtail. He was shown the bird. Second, a visitor on Saturday had seen the kelp gull that morning in Galveston and then promptly flew out here to see the wagtail. March 9th, 1996. Donna Heim, with her permission, sent me an email because she knew I was working on this video. And this is what her story is. She says, I heard about the black-backed wagtail on the San Francisco Rare Bird Alert / Bird Box. In my National Geo Life list, I wrote that day, March 9th, 1996, about 4 p.m., Doheny State Beach with Joel Weintraub, near mouth of San Juan Creek, Orange County. Continues. I was living near 101 Embarcadero exit at the time, fairly new to the Bay Area and to birding, and traveled by bus to and from Doheny to see the bird. As I recall, I probably took a bus from San Jose to Los Angeles and continued trip in another bus traveling to points south, including Doheny. I told the bus driver I wanted to go to Doheny Beach, and he asked me right away if I had come to see the bird. The bus driver asked me right away if I had come to see the bird? When I said yes, clearly surprised, he was already so familiar with it, he said he would drop me off where the wagtail was being seen. When he let me off, I saw you and knew right away you were a birder there to observe the black-backed wagtail. We exchanged names and you pointed out the bird to me, and I was happy that you and the bus driver had made it miraculously easy for me to find it after my long journey. You clearly knew a lot about the wagtail and were observing him closely. Though my life list entry was very brief that day, I later saw other white wagtails in other parts of California in subsequent years and made lots of notes on plumage behavior, vocalizations, flight patterns, etc. as a more experienced birder and as more experienced birders do. Here is a picture that was given to me by Jack Tassoff. It was taken either March 15th or March 16th, 1966. Probably the best picture that I've seen. Unfortunately, I found out that Jack had died in 2013 in an accident in a remote area of the Anza Borrego Desert. So this is kind of a tribute picture to Jack and to the wagtail. And here's my picture from about the same area, March 15th. And my best picture, I really like this because it just gives a feeling for the wagtail and, its movement patterns. March 15th. Bird Chat, 21 March. This week we had visitors from Texas, Nevada, Arizona, as well as various sites in California, including Redding, Modesto, and Berkeley. Most of the local Southern California birders who wanted to have seen the bird, and we are getting now small numbers of people who are visiting family or for business reasons and are fitting into their timetable or trip to our beach. Sometimes we are seeing vacationers who call the local Audubon Sanctuary or RBAs and are surprised the wagtail is in the area. Most early mornings, this is from the 21st, I'm the only observer, while late afternoons Tim Ryan is also there, and perhaps no more than 5 or 10 birders on each weekend day. Sometimes no one else on weekdays. These last 2 weeks, last night we had about 7 people at the roost that evening. This week's wagtail story. Put this on Bird Chat. A large truck, a lowboy, whatever that is now, hauling some steel, stopped me while I was watching the bird in the Hilton field. "Is the wiggletail still here?" asked one of the 2 truckers. I offered to show the bird to both of them, and they immediately let out the air brakes, got down from the rig, and using my binoculars enjoyed the bird for the next 10 minutes. And on the 21st, I lamented, note for future work, I wish I had recorded the number of birders per day and the percent of them that were from out of the local area. It would have made an interesting plot figure on the behavior of the birding public and also the economy of Dana Point. Also how they found out about the sighting. Tim and I tried to do this, but not in a systematic way. The best place to view the wagtail is from the downstream bridge over San Juan Creek at Doheny State Beach early morning or during the late afternoon. So far, everyone who has come to the beach before the roosting time has seen the bird, although on one occasion it was only for a few seconds. Now, the bird was foraging in this area north of the Hilton Inn in March, where there were puddles of water. The structure on the upper part is a trickling filter. This is taken March 24th, 1996. There were puddles of water in this whole area, and you can see a dried up puddle, 1996. Can the wagtail do that today? No, it can't, and that's where all that stuff was that you saw on the pictures, because there is going to be a desalinization plant that's going to be in that area. March 25th was the last date that the wagtail was seen in the fields during the middle of the day. It was seen there foraging on the early or late, though. After this date, the vagrant resumed its habit of flying upstream to an unknown daytime foraging area. Although searched on several days by Tim and me, there was no evidence it was using the Lenovia site again. 27th of March. The best place to view the wagtail is now upstream from the upstream bridge over San Juan Creek at Doheny State Beach, early morning and late afternoon. It was observed feeding in and around a small puddle of water outside or along the trickling filter of the secondary treatment plant upstream from the Hilton Inn, and I have a story about that, and on the same channel side. Its pre-roost behavior has gotten variable, probably due to the lack of feeding or landing areas downstream from the lower bridge, which sometimes is completely filled with water, sometimes from tidal influx. We missed its roost entrance on 2 occasions this week, although we were right by the roost tree. This week's wagtail story. There is a man, probably a long-term camper at Doheny State Beach, who often walks his dog while we are observing the wagtail. On occasion, he has asked our permission to walk his dog on the bike path near where the wagtail was foraging. We appreciated his thoughtfulness. A few days ago, he appeared, but this time he had a pair of binoculars around his neck. "I'm becoming a birdie just like you," he happily noted. And a bonus story. I spotted a group of brownie scouts in the lagoon with one of the park's rangers, and it was just after the wagtail had left, so I couldn't show him that. They were looking at birds with their adult leaders. They weren't there to see the rarity, but general bird life. "He's a real bird watcher," the leader said while introducing me to about 15 pairs of inquisitive eyes. I asked who was the shortest one there, set up my scope for her, and proceeded to position it on a pair of stationary snowy egrets. There was the usual jostling and cutting and shoving to see the birds, but I can predict that one of them will become an avid bird watcher. This brownie, I think the first one, came up to me and said, "That's a snowy egret in the scope, isn't it?" I assured her it was. "Then I can check it off my list," she said, and proceeded to do so right there. This week we had visitors from Colorado, Tennessee, Arizona, Minnesota, and Canada, the latter going on to attend ornithological meetings in San Diego. There's an influx of birders there, as well as various sites in California, including a number of birders. I think these were professionals from UC Davis, and they were going to the Cooper Ornithological Society annual meeting. So Joe Moreland was down also, I think, for the meeting, or at least he had made arrangements with some of the people there, and with his permission, he had published his field notes on March 30th, 1996. And this is what he said. He said, "Today," this is March 30th, 1996, "today after seeing the prothonotary warbler in Los Angeles, Jennifer Matkin and I decided to try for the black-backed wagtail at Doheny State Beach in Orange County. We arrived at the mouth of San Juan Creek about 3 p.m., where we met Jim Rising. Tell you about Jim in a second. And a colleague from Toronto who were taking a break from the Cooper Ornithological Society meeting in San Diego. They had been searching upstream with no luck. Soon we encountered Joel Weintraub, who has been keeping meticulous track of the wagtail since its discovery. He advised us that the bird, I advised them that the bird would not arrive at the downstream end of the creek until 4:15 p.m., and that it was futile to look for it upstream. And I reached over in my office this a couple of days ago, because I have Jim's book on the sparrows of the United States and Canada. We had some interesting people showing up. So Joe continues that about 4 p.m., we met near the sewage facility behind the Hilton Hotel. Joel was pointing out a wet spot near one of the tanks where the bird often came. I had been unable to see this wet spot, so when Jennifer said it was in our scope, I decided to look at it. While looking at this small wet spot, the male black-backed wagtail came walking out from behind the tank. It was only 4:05 p.m., so the bird was slightly early. None of us heard the bird call, so I surmised that the bird may have been behind the tank the whole time. I do have one picture from March 13th. This is probably near that trickling filter plant. You can just barely see the wagtail. You can see that the back is starting to have more black. So here we are in April. This is the period of highest aggression and singing. The bird was doing high flights. It became more wary of people. It left the roost in the morning earlier than I've seen it. And then it roosted on the 12th, and that's the last time it was seen. So let's look at the final situation here. Some April comments. The wagtail's aggressive behavior peaked during the first few days of April. The bird constantly sang in the morning while foraging on the edge of sand islands. And it would pick on anything that came close to it, including this killdeer. This week we had visitors from Florida, Arizona, Washington, Texas, Virginia, Idaho, Canada, as well as various sites in California. And here's this week's wagtail story. The bird itself is the feature today. It will either leave or be evicted by the other species here. This morning is a case in point. The bird was first seen at sunrise, 5:36 a.m., remained on the sand spits until it flew to a fence at 6:03. During the next 52 minutes, it, in sequence, mostly in the lagoon area along the reeds and sandbars, not going to see reeds today, chased a mockingbird, a male red-winged blackbird, a black phoebe, a male red-wing, then another red-wing, a yellow-rumped warbler, a killdeer, briefly, a crow, briefly, another crow, a male redwing, another redwing, a female redwing, blackbird, another male redwing, another male redwing, a rough-winged swallow, another rough wing, a Brewer's blackbird, then another Brewer's before it flew upstream. Some of these chases were across the width of the lagoon area, over 400 feet. And this set of pictures was taken within 2 or 3 minutes, heavily cropped, obviously. Here we have a red-winged blackbird on the left, and here we have a black-backed white wagtail. And you'll see that the back is pretty black. Well, hey, you're on my sandbar. You're still on my sandbar. I'm going to attack you. So here's a list of all the species chased. I think there's something like 19 species. Most of them were insect eaters, but some, however, were seed eaters. And then these are species chased or displaced the wagtail during this study. In the literature, wagtails are known as being aggressive species. So that brings me to the white wagtail in Costa Mesa on January that I looked at on January 31st, 2024, and I have a YouTube video on this. And this is the title cover of it, and I will give you a link to this in the show notes. And I went there. It was a chain fence. I had my binoculars and camera. I thought I could easily pick this up because of the action of the bird. It was pretty distant views. I pretty much almost gave up, walked away. A new bird had came. A couple of them were there that hadn't seen it. And this bird had picked up the bird. And then he called me back, and I was able to see it. And where's this bird? He was just sitting on a clump of debris. couldn't believe it. So I'm going to show you a sequence of photos showing that there's a pipit. And we're going to look at this in more detail. There's a pipit there on this mound. And the pipit's getting closer and closer to the wagtail. And the wagtail moved back. In other words, the pipit actually displaced the wagtail. These pictures in 2024 were taken with a Nikon P1000 camera, a lens, zoom lens equivalent to about an 800 millimeter lens. And I'm going to crop it. You can see it. So this is where the wagtail was, and, just sitting there. So now what's going to happen is, and this was taken within a minute, the pivot in the front is still in about the same position. But then what happens is the pivot moved up and the wagtail moved out, moved lower, moved back. And then I'm going to show you some video here. Video was very difficult to do because the camera was against the fence. I was hand holding it. There was tremendous movement of the camera back and forth. So I've taken a small segment and I've reduced it by 1/4 of a speed to somehow reduce the amount of the movement. And you'll see and I'm going to show you 2 video segments. You see in the first one that actually what's going to happen is that the pipit is going to be moving its tail. The wagtail is just kind of looking at the pipit. This is when the pipit had moved up. Remember, this is 1/4 speed. And the pipit's starting to move up farther. And then the pipit even farther up. And now they're both going to be wagging their tails. And people have noticed that this wagtail is hanging out with pipits, American pipits. So we don't know what the sex is right now of this white wagtail, but it's certainly not like the one in Doheny. April 4th, Ron Rideout posted to BirdChat, "I'd like to voice my thanks to Joel Weintraub for doing such a marvelous job of keeping everyone informed on the status of the black-backed wagtail at Dana Point. My wife and I saw this bird while vacationing in California back in February, and each time I read one of Joel's updates, it brings back the memory of a great day we spent birding the area from Bolsa Chica south to Dana Point. The day was capped by seeing the ever-reliable wagtail with the cheerful help of Tim Ryan. I think it's experience like ours, in the company of people like Tim and Joel, that make birding the great pastime it is." My picture on April 9th, showing how black the back is. BirdChat, 10th of April. This week we had visitors from Washington, New Mexico, Arizona, and various California locations. This week's wagtail story. The bird itself is the feature again today. Its aggressiveness has gone down during the last week, but is starting to show some interesting morning behavior. For no apparent reason, it is flying high out of the lagoon in mostly a westerly up the coast direction. Of the 6 flights observed, 2 resulted in the bird coming back to the lagoon. The other 4, the bird disappeared from view and wasn't seen again until that afternoon. The first time this behavior happened, Tim and I thought we were watching its goodbye, but the bird returned to the roost in late afternoon as it has done the other times it showed these high flights. I can only guess that this is practice for the animal, evidence of drives that wanted to stay and wanted to go. And I also posted this on the 10th of April. I want to share one email that thanked me and indicated a general problem with vagrants that in the present situation Tim and I have eliminated. One of the problems which I, and I'm sure other birders have with rarities 5+ hours away, is that I can't drop everything and chase them. However, over a period of time, I can usually get the opportunity to get to the area, but in most cases, the bird is no longer being reported or changes in location, activity are not noted, and the opportunity is lost. April 13th, 1996, gone. Bird chat, 13th April. The bird roosted normally last night, a little early at 7:08 p.m. This morning I got to the lagoon at 6 a.m., plenty early to see the bird. But no bird, no calls, no body. This was the first time that I could not find it in the early morning. There was another bird there, and Tim also showed up. We searched the stream bed, beneath the roost tree, the lagoon, all to no avail. The wagtail this afternoon, with 10 birders there, was not seen in the channel. This was on a Saturday, or lagoon area around the park's bridges, nor did we see it around the roost tree. Again, this is the first time Tim and I have not seen the bird in these areas in late afternoon since we started our observations. It is unlikely that we missed the bird in both these time periods. I don't think it's still in our area. I will be at the roost site tomorrow, and if the wagtail is again located, I will send out a short message. If not, this will be our last wagtail update for this season. I didn't think it would leave like this. I thought the bird would circle the lagoon, dip its wing to Tim and I, and head north. As many will attest, this wagtail was very accommodating and showed many outstanding behaviors. It made many friends and admirers. It is a unique niche among North American species. Tim and I thank the hundreds of birders who have stopped by to see this vagrant and shared tales with us of birding exploits. At least 22 U.S. states were represented here, as well as 3 foreign countries. And then it came back. I'll show you the full report from 1996. That one adult male at Doheny State Beach, seen 27th September to 7th October, and I provided documentation. I was not the one that first relocated the bird. I don't know who did it. I'd like to know what the name of that woman birder was. I would post it on the show notes. So this bird was considered to be the same bird returning from the previous year. Why? It went to the same roost site. Its sudden disappearance, when it appeared to have settled in to spend a second winter, suggested possible predation. And here are the people who did documentation on the fall. And I told Birdchat that the Doheny Beach, Orange County, California wagtail roosted normally on the 7th October. 2 New York birders who flew out to see the bird as part of their trip saw it that evening with Tim Ryan's help. However, the bird was not located in the stream bed or at the roost tree the afternoon or evening of 8th of October, nor was it seen this morning at its roost area. It's likely the wagtail is no longer in the area. If we again encounter the bird, we will post the information. The wagtail was first seen this fall on 27th September and used the same roost tree as it did when it was observed in January through April. Acknowledgements. We thank Stacy Peterson and John Renner who publicized the bird on their rare bird alerts, and the staff at Doheny State Beach who allowed us to come into the park before opening time, who were very cooperative during the entire venture. We thank our families and friends who really saw us during this time period and put up with our study. I will miss my sample size of 1. It also made me a better observer, early riser, and photographer, though substantially increasing the profit line of the local film developer. It also led to my running the Orange County, California Rare Bird Report from 1997 through 2017 out of my home using a 4 mailbox answering machine, and my taking the internet name of Wagtail 1997. During the course of our observations, I put together a list of papers on wagtail feeding behavior, up to 1996. Home range and plumage changes. I thank Barbara Magnuson and Elizabeth Housewright, who aided in the literature search, and Kimball Garrett, Jim Abernathy, and Bill Smith, who helped find additional references. I'll include the reference list with the show notes. I also thank Joe Moreland and John Levine, who gave me insights into the bird's feather tracks and molt patterns, Maya Decker for the wagtail video, and the Dana Point Harbor Patrol for useful weather records of the area. And with that, I hope people go out and see the 2024 Orange County wagtail. I hope it sticks around. It'd be interesting to see, make comparisons between it and the Doheny bird as well. So thanks for staying and hearing about our exploits in 1996. Bye-bye.